I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristin Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years, and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised, we'd be cordial.
Hey everybody, Kristin here. We have Sara Navratil on the show today. She's a new podcaster on the network with the show Rewrite Your Life, which was a fun journey working with her to get that title to be the perfect one for her show. She does a lot of incredible work. I've even done some personal work with her. She's going to explain what that is and tell us more about herself and why she does what she does. So Sara, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk to you as always. And I am a certified Canfield Success Principles trainer. I just got trained this summer with that, and that has been such a life-changing experience. Really helped me to be more positive and focus on goal setting and visualization and things like that. So I'm really excited to have that credential now.
And that's Jack Canfield, for listeners that I knew who he was once you said his name, but he is actually extremely well known.
Yes, Jack Canfield. Thank you. And I am a wife, mother of 3 children, one of which is in college. And I have a freelance business that I do at home on the side, along with my business that I am now starting of coaching and speaking and writing and podcasting.
And she has, and this will crack you up because you're going to have to tell them how many views it got. She has this YouTube video, has nothing to do with what we're talking about at all, but it's hilarious. So please tell our listeners what it's about and how many people have watched it.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's a little bit embarrassing, but a few years ago, I put up a video about cleaning the hard water stains from your toilet, and it has almost 1 million views now. So it's apparently amazing. Quite a popular subject.
Do you have a ton, as it's been a while since I've gone and looked at it, did you get a ton of comments on it?
There are quite a few comments. A lot of them are about what I did wrong, like how I emptied the toilet wrong, or,
right.
I shouldn't have had strings on my jacket that I was wearing because they were dangling down by the toilet. But I do have a lot of comments that thank you for this tip. This was a really great tip. I now have a clean white toilet, and I wasn't able to for years. So yeah, it's been really fun.
That just cracks me up. You hear people that go, I just want to get that, that one crazy cat video that's going to help me, get 1 million subscribers, and people will try to get that crazy cat story or toilet cleaning story, their whole life, and it never happens. And you just do it on a fluke with no expectation of that happening. And look at what happened.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's incredible. So why for you did you want to get into doing the kind of coaching that you're doing?
I have struggled so much in my life, overcoming, as you know, past sexual abuse and shame-based parenting. I kind of go back and forth as to whether my mother's a narcissist or not, but I just that whole overcoming the past. And the more I overcame and overcame and overcame, the more I wanted to share that with others. And I saw my ability to help others come out of that shame place that so many of us who were abused and raised by abusive parents, narcissistic parents, have been in so much of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Really wanted to help people come out of that and not just keep this joy and functionality that I now have in my life to myself. So I really wanted to share that with the world and with others who have been in this place and who have struggled and are struggling like I have and still struggle sometimes, and just walk through that journey with them.
Good, because I know it's helped me. We've only had a couple sessions, but they're pretty amazing. There's something about, and listeners of my show, this, when the person that you're working with on these types of issues that Sara just talked about, because I share them with her, there's something about working with someone that has been through something extremely similar that helps bring a whole new level of healing to your therapeutic session. So I know a lot of people get into this type of work because of the trauma that they've experienced, but in the counseling world, you can't necessarily share as easily what your story is. And I understand why, but when you do things that are more coaching, you can. And that's why there's, a good place for it in the coaching world.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but that really is a beautiful benefit of going into coaching as opposed to some kind of a medical psychological profession.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that feeling of camaraderie and knowing that that person really gets those deep dark feelings is
Mhm.
really, you just can't exchange that for anything. I absolutely love my husband. He's been incredibly supportive to me all of our marriage, and I am so blessed to have him and have him to talk to, but there are certain things that he just cannot even fathom how I feel about them and have felt about them, because he just hasn't gone through that, and that's no fault of his. But it's so important to find somebody who can really relate to those feelings and really knows that, whether it's sadness or fear, anxiety or despair or anger, whatever that you're feeling, there's a certain way that we feel that when we've been through something that some people just aren't able to understand through no fault of their own.
Absolutely. And, the thing about being triggered daily, which is, something that you've talked about, a lot of times we don't even know that that's what's going on. We just always feel awful.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I think the more that you, as you know, I do tapping, and the more that you clear, it's kind of interesting, the clearer the triggers become, so that you're able to start to step out of that. And sometimes you go back into it, but you can recognize, oh, yeah, I'm triggered. Now I need to deal with this.
yeah, it's really interesting to, get to do the hard work on yourself, like what you're talking about, and to then, understand, oh, okay, that's what's going on. I'm triggered, working through that and coming to a different place of it where you just want to be out of pain every day, all day pain, because it does feel like you're an animal in a cage that's maybe it's a wire cage. And so people are able to just poke through sticks and poke you through the cage and you're just trapped there. That can be what it feels like to have that kind of PTSD. But to get to another place, you've been doing the work, you've been doing the work, you've been doing the work. You're not afraid anymore of the triggers and things like that come up, because you know that there's something like what you're talking about, tapping or working with someone like you that will help you release it. And then realizing what I'm realizing now, which is sometimes the things that come up are fantastic. They don't feel great, but the action of sitting in my feelings instead of running from them, trying to escape them, but sitting in my feelings about it, being uncomfortable, and then realizing that that was some kind of contrast I needed in order to clear through, in order to get to what the other side of that is, which is this joy and blissfulness and so on. it's a nice journey to go to those places, you know?
It really is. It really is. That just brought up something. We kind of have had some difficulty this summer with our daughter and illness and surgery and things like that. And I've just been through a lot in my life, as so many of us have been. And then we had our basement flood through a failure of the sump pump. And I think I was really struggling before that, but that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I have not felt that kind of despair for a long time, actually, since I was in PTSD about 10 or so years ago. And while I was in it, I couldn't see my way out of it. This was really probably the darkest place that I've ever gone. But the great thing is, I was able to use that technique that I use. I was able to use different forms of tapping that I have to get out of that. And the place that it took me to was, I believe, a place of apathy from when I was a child, a place of being completely alone, no way out, totally scared, and had no way to process what was happening, obviously, as a baby and young child. And that really there was nobody that was going to help me. And in fact, I went to a place where I shut my feelings down and I decided that there was no God, there was nobody. I mean, I was completely alone. And it was a really strange feeling as I tapped on this, because it was as though I had shut my feelings off, but the hurt was so deep that I almost couldn't stand it. It was the strangest dichotomy of feeling that I've ever had. And I think because I had shut my feelings off, but in doing this, and getting in touch with it, I was actually drawing them out, and I was having to feel that despair of, there's just no point. There's no point in, coaching. There's no point in doing my freelancing. There's no point
podcasting,
in podcasting. This isn't going to help anybody. I'm just going to give up. I'm just going to stop. And it took some various techniques that I have to get through that one, because it was such a deep, dark place. But then afterwards, I felt so much lighter and freer, and like it switched around, like it almost like did a 180, and I just wanted to live. And I'm like, great, I got that one done. Now I'm going to go work on my freelancing. Like it just cleared.
Yeah.
Something that was so deep that I don't think if this hadn't happened with our basement water damage, I don't think that I could have gone to that place, and then that would not have been healed. So for me, that's such an important thing for people who have been through abuse and really terrible situations, trauma, to remember that we can go into those places, and if we have techniques, we can help ourselves come out of them, and it doesn't have to keep us down in that deep, dark place.
Exactly. And that there are things to be learned from those deep, dark places. I mean, we're going to go to those places off and on the rest of our lives. That's just what happens. But to go there without the sense of foreboding that you'll never get out of it, to go into it going, okay, what have you got to teach me? I started doing that about depression, seasonal affective disorder. And every year that I've been doing it, I've had less and less and less of that happen for me, to the point now where I just don't even really have it happen. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen again in the future, because that's the nature of depression. But ever since I started saying, okay, it's depression, it's coming, I can feel it. And okay, I'm going to just go into it. Just instead of trying to pretend it isn't here or run from it or what have you, I'm going to welcome it in and go, okay, what are you here to teach me? Just that alone has made it, get to the point where I don't even think I have it anymore.
Amazing. Yeah, that's wonderful technique.
So talk to those listeners that are tuning in that don't know what tapping is. Like what exactly is that?
Okay, well, tapping is, it's actually physically tapping on certain points on your body that are meridians, and each of those goes to an organ, to an emotion in our body. So one place you might tap on is for anxiety, one place is for embarrassment, one place is for guilt and shame, those kind of things. And when you you start out with a phrase about kind of what you're feeling. So, even though I feel like life isn't worth living anymore, I totally and unconditionally love and accept myself. And you tap on a certain place for that, so that you kind of tap in this lovingness. I don't know what other word there is. It's a lovingness to yourself before you start to clear this, because as you start to clear it, it can be, it can bring up the really negative hard emotions. And then you would just go through a sequence of tapping on these various points, saying the thing that's bothering you. So, life isn't worth living anymore. And you say that every time you tap, and you tap, 5 or 10 times on each spot. And you just keep doing that sequence. And as you do it, it'll take the intensity down, 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 down until eventually you can get it to a 0 and you don't believe that anymore. And you're able to move on.
Yeah, that's certainly what I experienced in the sessions that we did. And it was amazing to realize how much anxiety for me has played out in my life is that I just become still.
Mm-hmm.
So the energy from the anxiety gets stuck in my stillness.
Mm-hmm.
So doing something like this isn't like, oh, go jog. Because when you have that, when I've had that much anxiety or, PTSD, whatever was going on, I didn't have the energy to do anything but just be still. So to be able to do something where I'm still not really, I'm not being told to go run a mile, I'm tapping, it's still an action that's releasing some of that energy. It's a movement I'm making that helps get you out of that still stuck place.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, that's quite often when we're in that place, we don't want to do anything. We are stuck. I mean, that's what the tapping does, is it kind of unsticks. I mean, my grammar is probably really bad today, but it unsticks, the thing that is stuck, and it shifts it to a positive. So people might say, well, why would I want to be tapping and saying the negative thing? Well, that's because you believe the negative thing and you want to reverse that. So we're going to tap that out. And eventually in your mind, as you're tapping, you will start to combat that in your mind. You'll notice yourself saying, well, wait a minute, life is worth living. You'll have that thought go through your head, or whatever it is you're tapping on. So, and that's just one way of tapping. There are many different ways of tapping. I have used Dr. Henry Grayson's way of tapping for a long time. That's called TFT and EFTA. And those are a little more emotionally involved. But there are times, like this incident that I described yesterday, Monday, I guess it was, I needed to do that too. I needed to do the EFTA, where I was actually releasing the actual emotion by touching that point. So it's not always physically tapping. You might just touch that point, but it's always something to do with the meridians and releasing that. And I did want to say, for the listeners too who don't know anything about it, it's also called emotional freedom technique, or EFT. So if you look that up.
Right. You can look that up online, and there's a ton of information about it. So tell our listeners about, what Rewrite Your Life, is about. What is that for you? I mean, obviously I can get it from what you're saying, but there's more to it than what we've been talking about.
Absolutely. I think for me, the biggest part of what Rewrite Your Life means to me is ditching the victim mentality. I just did a couple podcasts on that.
I know,
and
they were really good.
Thank you. And it's about, we were victims as children. I know that a lot of your listeners probably were abused as children and in their lives. And we were victims. That was a time in our life when we did not have any, power to stop that. And so many of us stay in that victim mentality, and we continually live in that for our whole lives, not realizing that, hey, I'm an adult now. I'm older. I have choices. I can learn. I can change. I can grow. And I don't have to let those people that did that to me have the last word about my life and how I'm going to live it. So it's really about stopping that victim mentality and taking back your power. We don't have to stay in that victim place. We can find our power. We can find our place. We can change things, and we can learn to be more functional. We can learn to be a partner instead of an adversary. We can learn to encourage our children instead of tear them down, like maybe was done with us. we
Right.
can learn to find peace, a peacefulness, rather than always being in fight or flight. There are so many things that we can rewrite, and tapping is just one way of rewriting that. Now, I think it's the fastest way. It's the way that has helped me the most this past year. But I've been rewriting my life for, I don't know, as long as I can remember, really.
Yeah.
And there are so many techniques that you can use to actually even rewrite a story, actually write out the story and give it a different ending.
Mm.
Because our imagination doesn't know the difference between reality and the imaginary. So when you reframe an experience with a different ending that you make up, when you look back at that experience, you don't have that same fight or flight response. So it's just changing that neural pathway in your mind from a fight or flight place to an understanding place, a coping place where you've actually coped with it in a way that's healthy.
Right.
And you can see it differently.
I think too, when when we're talking about, we were victims as children, and the parental things or the things that we can do as parents that maybe aren't so hot, with our own kids because of the modeling that we had and our own choices. But there's also so much to be said for, and I know this is going to speak to you because you and I have talked about it, the parenting of ourselves. I mean, you hear all this stuff about, oh, your inner child, and that has gotten so watered down and it gets kind of made fun of now. But the reality is, you do have a child inside of you that is your inner child, that is a part of your makeup. And if you don't learn how to be friends with that child, love it, take care of it properly, be the kind of parent that they always deserved, that child can run your life. And it is not pretty as an adult.
Absolutely. I'm sitting here with goosebumps and a swelling heart and tears in my eyes because that is just so near and dear to my heart. Like you said, that really speaks to me. And I think people, don't realize, I didn't realize that we have that inner child, that when we aren't parented properly or when negative things happen to us, abusive type things, whether it's from our parents or whomever, we actually get stuck in that. We never file that memory into a place of understanding, and it has language and it has context to it. So it's just swimming around there and we're just stuck. We're just stuck in those places. And unless you go back and, reparent that, like you said, you address it in a different way. You take that little girl or little boy into your arms and tell them you love them and you're always going to be there for them in whatever way you're doing your rewriting. They're just going to stay stuck there, and they are going to, like you said, they're going to run your life. They're going to make you miserable, because if you're going to continue operating out of that place in your life. So, say you might be able to function very well in your job, but emotionally you are acting like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old, so your relationships are crap, and, you're just messed up in all these other areas, but maybe you can function at your job because maybe that part of you never got stuck. Right. So that's kind of something that people don't realize, why am I stuck in this part of my life, but not others? I can do all these other things. Well, there's a part of you that's still stuck back there that needs some love and attention and help. And then when he or she is assuaged, then you can move on with your adultness, be an adult.
See, you went from, grammatically challenging things to a word like assuage.
It's been a long week. It's been a long week, and I have no floor on my office. And so I'm going back and forth between words that probably do not exist and words that are quite fabulous.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I had a therapist say to me, and I didn't get it at the time, but she said, well, yeah, this is why this stuff is going on that's out of control in your life, because your little kid is running the show and she is like a kid in a candy store. You're not giving her any boundaries. You're not disciplining her. She is just running wild in that candy store, grabbing everything she can grab. And I would just look at her and I'd be like, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what that means. What are you talking about? And, of course, years later, the more, that was before I started learning about what narcissistic personality disorder is.
Mm-hmm.
And years later, when I would read about narcissistic personality disorder and go, oh, okay, so for a lot of us that have had abuse as a kid, we can, be stuck at different ages from our childhood, and that kid is running around, that kid is operating, your body is the robot and that kid is the one at the controls,
Yeah.
operating in your life. And that happens many, many times to many, many people. And when it becomes a personality disorder is when it's stuck for good there. Luckily,
Mm-hmm.
some of us, a lot of us, including me, can go to therapy, will go to therapy, work on those things, and grow up and parent healthily that inner child to keep her from being the kid in the candy store. And, we move on. Someone with a personality disorder, yeah, that ain't happening.
Exactly. Exactly. And I was listening to your triad show where you said that those people, even if they go to therapy, they actually just learn the language. They don't rehabilitate. They just learn the language and they become even more manipulative. And I can very much understand that. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. We had a lovely counselor that had come on my show many, many times, Melissa Richards, and she would say, I would date these guys, or I would see them as a patient, not her boyfriends, but other narcissistic people. And she'd be like, I just help them with all kinds of counselees that now they can now go and perpetrate upon other people.
Oh, goodness.
And I was like, yep, that's what you don't. I mean, I have helped many a personality disordered character, learn how to manipulate better, unknowingly, of course, but that's unfortunate that happens, but it happens.
Absolutely.
So how do you, when you're working with someone, let's say, who just really is in an abusive relationship with someone like, that has a character disorder, how have you seen using something like tapping? And I know because you and we don't live in the same state. We did this over Zoom so we could look at each other, and I, did the whole process with you. But when you're working with someone where, because I've been there, you've been there, listeners have been there, you're like a wild trapped animal because you're being gaslit into being that. How would something like what you do help someone when they're in that space?
That's a great question. Whether you're doing the tapping or you're actually rewriting an experience, physically, or doing it in your imagination, like you were just describing, that person is in a fight or flight place. They don't know where to go. They're trapped and they are just stuck. So what this process does is it takes one piece of that and brings it out of the fight or flight into a place of calm. It
Nice.
files one memory. It files one experience. It changes one viewpoint that you have. And so many of our memories that aren't filed and the things even that are filed are all interconnected. And you might, think of it as a ball of yarn that's all tangled, and you pull on one part of it and maybe that tightens another part or loosens another part, and it's connected to all this. And so there's so many things that are connected, and it's kind of a process of peeling an onion where you take off layer by layer by layer. It's not something that you can untangle the whole ball of yarn at one time.
Right.
You can't do it. It's a process, and it's challenging. It takes a lot of stamina
And time.
and time. But one thing that just popped into my head was something that my counselor said to me. He said, you need to give yourself some credit. He said, you, at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, 9, 10, 11, 12, you were really good at coping. You survived a lot. And I think that so many of us don't give ourselves credit for all the different ways we learn to cope. Now, granted, they're probably not functional as adults. Some of the things I did to cope are not going to be good to use as an adult, but we survived, right? We didn't die. We didn't go insane. And so we need to really give ourselves credit for that and understand that this is a process. It was a series of events that happened over a lifetime until we are how old we are now. And we have a series of things to clear. And we just take it one step at a time, one belief at a time. For the last year and a half, since I really started doing tapping, I have been clearing at least one thing every day. I have it all written down in notebooks, all the things that I've cleared. Sometimes I've cleared 7 or 8 things in a day. I do not highly recommend that, but because that can be incredibly draining. But it's a process of just taking it one step at a time, one belief at a time. And when you clear that, something else will probably come up, because it's like, okay, now you've taken off a layer and something else can bubble up to the surface. Right. And then you take that thing, and it's really something that I want people to understand, that it takes time. It's not, let's just pop a pill and we'll be okay. It's not that kind of a thing. It's a lot of work. It's a daily process of taking one step forward, sometimes 2 or 3 steps back, but every day you just keep taking another step forward, and you rest, and you just keep plugging away at it until eventually you come out of that fight or flight place.
Exactly. Then you can live with all the chaos and, drama that goes on in the world that's just the way it is. But you're not feeling like that caged animal at the mercy of all the chaos and drama. You actually have some measure of ability to handle it.
Absolutely.
From a less triggered space, which is incredible. And it's so true. When you shift energy around like that in your own body, from, like you said, clearing something and then something else might come up. I think what people get afraid of, I know I certainly did, was, okay, I don't want to stick my finger or take the lid off of that boiling pot, because if I let any of it out, I will never stop crying, or I will not, like, you just feel like it's just way too overwhelming. And it does feel like that, but you don't die. It actually creates this wonderful room. I actually had a woman that I work with say, listen, we've been clearing a lot of stuff. Don't fill up with a bunch of activities. You're going to want to go do, you're one of those people, you want to create. You're going to create a whole bunch of stuff because you'll have this room to go do it. And she goes, I challenge you to not do that. You need to, just for this particular process, you need to really let this sink in, and we don't know what else might need to come up from it. And if you just add more busy, you're missing the opportunity to really clear up some of the things. And so when I was working with you on my stuff, I took the nap. I didn't work the rest of the day. I took that time, and I remembered, you're going to feel really clear and free. Don't fill up with busy.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. Yep. And it just, being busy is just another coping mechanism. Yep. It's just another way to
another anesthetizing.
Yep. To numb ourselves to our feelings. And, that's really been clear to me lately, about how good we are, those of us who have been abused, at numbing our feelings, numbing ourselves, and finding a way to avoid it. Now that I've been doing this for quite a long time, I have this funny thing that happens. I have something usually that I'm triggered about. When I get mad at my husband, I will just get mad at him for no reason. I mean, he can be as sweet as pie. He's done nothing. He's, asked me to go on a date. I mean, he will just be, and I will be so mad at him. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm triggered. It's a way of, if I get mad at him, then I don't have to feel the way I'm feeling. So I'm going to numb my feelings by getting mad at him. And it's not even a conscious thing. It's a subconscious thing. But once you become aware of it, then you can say, okay, I'm going to bring that to the surface now. Tell my husband, I'm really mad at you, but it has nothing to do with you. So I need to go and be by myself now. And I need to go figure this out, because that's not fair. That's that's one of the things, as we numb, we take out then that anger on somebody else. We have to spray that somewhere. And if we're not going to deal with it ourselves, it's just going to spray onto everybody else. So that's part of that victim mentality, ditching that is to start to become self-aware and say, how am I hurting others by not taking care of my own stuff? And then really you're hurting yourself too. It's like you're almost adding insult to injury when you don't deal with your emotions.
Oh, I can't even. It's some kind of testament to something, test of wills, whatever it is, that my ex-husband and I are still in each other's lives, because we just bled, emotional bullets all over each other for years. We did that. And now that we're both, he's in his 60s and I'm going to be 50, we can go, okay, yeah, I'm going to hang up now, because I'm just really in a bad mood and you are someone I feel safe with, and I just want to make something your fault. So I'm going to hang up.
It's so fun. I just want to make something your fault. I'm going to have to use that phrase. Tell my husband, I'm really mad at you and I just really want to make something your fault. So I need to remove myself from your presence at this time.
Mm-hmm. I had to do it with my son because I was the person he could get angry with, because mom wasn't going anywhere and everybody else did. So that was fine as a kid, but as an adult, I had to go, okay, now this is abuse behaved back at me. You can't do this anymore. You're going to have to deal with those feelings. I'm not the repository for your anger anymore. And, that caused a several month non-speaking to each other thing that I went, oh my gosh, I'm estranged from my child. What kind of a mother is it? All that stuff. And then we were back talking again. And I realized we may need to do that a couple more times. But I remember talking about this with a friend who went, wait, how many months were you not talking? I said, I think it was like 4 months. And he goes, Kristin, I have friends who haven't spoken to their parents in 12 years. Like, really? 4 months?
Oh.
But I'm not afraid of needing that kind of disconnection again if it helps the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true.
So, well, I'm excited. I love listening to the shows. I love hearing what pitch your voice is at, because I can tell you just naturally have a higher voice than a lot of people. That's just where your voice is registered. But I can tell based on good things and challenging things where you're at based on the pitch of your voice.
That is so interesting.
And I mean, and it's not a bad if it's high and good if it's low. Has nothing to do with that. It's just the register of your voice. Sometimes about something really happy, it'll be higher.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes more, serious things, it'll be lower. And I'm like, she is just somebody who moves within that parent-child space, and it comes out in her voice.
That's really interesting.
And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that child coming out. We got to let that child come out. We just have to be the, healthy parent. So it's not a litmus test on, her voice sounds high today, there must be something wrong. It's not that at all. It's just, I don't know a lot of people who have that physical manifestation like you do around
really
what's going on with you internally. And that's what makes you such a big giant empath too, is because you have that.
Mm-hmm.
I do it too. I just do it with my face.
And we can't see that. So.
I know. That's why I like podcasting. I have such a hard time. If someone has really been disrespectful, or, I get it that they are really a highly narcissistic person. And sometimes you don't find that out until you're physically with them. I cannot pretend with my face that I'm not disturbed. Mm-hmm. So I have to distance myself for a while from their presence, work through my stuff, and then, deal with them on a project or whatever, or not. Sometimes it calls for just leaving, but I just can't do it. I just can't do it. And other people can, and good for them.
Yep. That's so interesting. And, now that you said that, it's very interesting because my children and my husband will say something about that. Like, you need to listen to how you're talking right now. So, just, the irritation, the frustration, and, that stuff that comes out needs to be dealt with. And, that's really interesting because then they'll say, Mom, you're so bubbly. My kids will say, Mom, you're so bubbly and you're so much fun, which a lot of the time that I am
Yep.
those things. And so, they see me go back and they laugh at me and they think it's funny that I watch Barbie movies and, because
Hey, that is you honoring your inner child.
oh, yes. On Sunday, I watched 5 in a row. I was definitely needing a break. So
I love it. See, I get mine out with these puppies that I've got and my horse. That is all inner child. It's older person too, but it's definitely like, okay, inner child, you go have fun, honey.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just a thing I think it's a gift. It's a gift that you have that physical manifestation. It's a sign of not just an empath, like a super empath. Because we can't,
Thank you.
we can't, we're so in our self and our feelings and feeling what's going on with other people that we just don't have the ability to add another mask on top of that. So I always see it as a compliment,
Yeah. And just hearing you say add a mask. Oh, that just, wow. That touches me deeply. Like, I don't want to do that.
Exactly.
It reminds me of a time that I tapped and I actually had a rubber suit on. It was zipped up all the way over my head. And I unzipped that as part of that rewriting process. And it just kind of made me feel that I don't want to put a mask on. I like who I've become now. I don't want to be somebody else. And I don't care if people don't, like
it shines
me.
through your voice. And that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
The worst thing you could do is try to control that. So it's a gorgeous thing. Well, tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and where they can find your show.
Sure. Well, my show is called Rewrite Your Life. It is on the Mental Health News Radio Network, which is your network. That's also MHNR network.com. And my website is called Sara Liza Life, and that is SaraLizaLife.com. And that is something that I'm slowly plugging away at, working on. And
it's gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm, just slowly working on becoming a public speaker and writing books, but everything has to be in its time. Right now, I'm kind of in a place of taking care of myself, something that I haven't done for many years. So I'm working with a personal trainer and starting to get healthier so that I don't have so much physical pain, and to be stronger. And, as I get older, I'm finding that I'm getting weaker and weaker. This is not a good thing.
Right.
So,
right. We're not 22 and can just go off and not sleep for 3 days and be perfectly fine. Yeah, that's not part of our life experience anymore.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm just plugging away at things and, they'll develop as they develop, and I'm not going to get my undies in a bundle, as some people say, and get all upset about this. It's going to be what it is, and it'll all happen in its time.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so honored that you are a part of this network and that you work with me on my own stuff, because that helps everybody to do with the network. If I'm working on my stuff, it helps everybody, and including me. And I have to give a shout out to our amazing Frank King, who is the person that introduced me to you.
Oh, yes. Absolutely fantastic.
That man, I have to do a PSA about Frank, and I mean a good PSA, not a warning one, because that man has brought so many incredible, it's such an example of someone when you see who's a part of their life, who's inspired to be around them. And every single person that Frank has brought into my life has been just this tremendous, incredible person, including you.
Oh, thank you. And I am so grateful to be on the network and to be working with you in all the different ways that we work together. And it's just such a blessing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health News Radio.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive. aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial.